Carol Woods is a Lancashire social worker who became involved in whistleblowing in connection with a child abuse and financial scandal within the local authority where she worked. She has been on YouTube with a number of videos and a blog to explain what happened to her psychologically during the time that she was harassed, and some of the tactics that were used against Carol Woods by the police, the courts, and a number of authorities, including the mental health service, after she became involved in a court case which threatened to expose a number of individuals. Carol Woods has written about this extensively and talked about it in a number of interviews, and I want to include some of the text that Carol wrote and some descriptions she gave in connection with how these tactics take place and how they can be used against individuals. Carol states that the harassment she experienced has the intention of making her give up the investigation she was pursuing, and also the crucial issue is that some of these things are so incredulous and so unbelievable that they will make Miss Woods sound mentally ill. This is an entry from a recent blog post by Carol Woods, where she goes on to say that she has experienced perpetual harassment, organised, collective, and much of a type which is known as gaslighting. The intention of this is to make Miss Woods sound as though she's going mad. And again, I refer back to my previous comment that there is a collusion, certainly in the case of Carol Woods, who was involuntarily sectioned, a collusion with mental health authorities in taking individuals who have no prior history of any mental illness off the streets and putting them into this system, and it's done in a way which is entirely legal. But I think in this instance, the gaslighting that Carol Woods is talking about, and that she talks about extensively in her interviews with UK Column, and also several other independent media outlets, is what we would call today, in a contemporary sense, we call that gang stalking. I would call it collective harassment. At the time that this occurred, which I think was in 2005, 2006, Carol Woods probably wasn't familiar with the term gang stalking, and perhaps she isn't familiar with that today. But I think this is a very kind of early version of that, and she goes on to talk about a number of instances that she experienced in YouTube videos. One of the most basic tactics that Carol talks about in her interview with Freedom Talk Radio is that she would find incongruities and small bits and pieces around the place which seemed not to make sense to her. So here she's holding up a poster that was put into a cafe bar. It was displayed in a cafe bar that she attended regularly, and she said that it was very, very out of place and very incongruous with the environment. It's just somewhere you wouldn't expect to find a poster for a police choir, Manchester Police Choir. So Carol took the poster down and she made a record of it, and she went to tourist information slightly later, and she just said, "Can you tell me where this is happening, because I'd like to attend?" And tourist information told her that they had no record of anything like this taking place. And obviously at the time Carol Woods was involved with ongoing proceedings and was not in a very good relationship with Manchester Police, and this is obviously Manchester Police Choir. In Carol Woods' recorded interviews on YouTube with Freedom Talk Radio, she talks about experiencing situations with individuals who would perhaps come up to her and make hand gestures, who might follow her, who might be, she might see a number of people 6 or 7 times in the same day, to the point where she became aware of them, sensitization to colours around her, that kind of thing. And she also talks about, for some reason, the clergy being prominent in 2012. She said, "I saw a lot of that," and I think she's referring to being followed having people making hand gestures around her, people walking behind her at the same time, another one walking in front. Now, obviously, there is there could be a counter argument that Carol Woods was perhaps becoming paranoid. However, again, it's not surprising that she was paranoid, is it? Because there are so many other instances that she's explained of a similar nature. Carol Woods, in an interview with UK Column, goes on to describe what is sometimes referred to as vehicular harassment, harassment with cars, and she has said that she observed cars parked outside her house at right angles so that she couldn't exit or enter the property, and also she observed people hanging around in those cars who are usually men who would park there for about an hour or something and then just move away. She also talks about a number of SU vehicles, what Miss Woods describes as fancy cars. So she goes on to say, always male, and they would just sit there and they would drive away after an hour with no apparent reason for being outside her house. She goes on to say that the main beams from the cars would be shone through the front room window of her house, and obviously that's a favourite intimidation tactic. It's very hard to prove if you live on your own that this is happening to you, and it can very easily be disputed because there is always, in circumstances like this, plausible deniability, which means that in some cases it's easy to say, oh well, we're just delivering something, we're just doing this, we're visiting a friend, but slightly more difficult in the case of Carol Woods because she lived in a cul-de-sac with not very many neighbours and not many houses nearby, so what were they doing outside her house? And she likens this situation to Alcatraz, to becoming trapped in a prison of your own home. The case of Carol Woods occurred in, I think it was 2005, but I know that she also gave interviews quite recently in 2015 explaining the extensive details of the case, because it's an enormous case, and there's a lot of court documents and various other issues. So she does talk about it from an historical perspective, and she's given an interview to UK Column and also to Freedom Talk Radio. There are also some recordings on YouTube of Carol when she was involuntarily sectioned, and independent media were trying to contact the hospital where she was sectioned, and there's a recording of what happened to her when she was in hospital and her efforts to try to get out of hospital, and her disputes, extensive disputes with the mental health system, and also some issues surrounding individuals masquerading and misrepresenting themselves as psychiatrists who were involved in her case. So that's very interesting stuff. I'll try to put some links under the video. Thank you.